When my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer, my family experienced things that surprised us. Even though my sister's a nurse and I'd read about cancer and I thought I understood the mechanics of the disease and I knew it was going to happen physically, there were still things within the family and things with our interaction with the medical establishment that we weren't prepared for, that surprised us. And very early on in this experience, I got the idea I should share this with people. This is something people can benefit from. I didn't know if I'd be writing about it. I didn't know if it would be magazine articles or books. I didn't know what it would be until one day when I went to chemotherapy with my mother. Chemotherapy is a boring thing to go through. You sit in the chair for 2-3 hours and they pump the chemo into your veins, and at least my mother typically napped through it. So I went with her and I took some paperwork to do, and she was just sitting there and I turned a piece of paper over and I sketched her sitting there in the chair, and I put little captions around it. You know, this is the walking stick she made in Alaska, and these are the names and the dosages of the drugs she's taking today, and this is the blanket they gave her to keep her lap warm. And I just looked at this one sheet of paper with these captions around it and realized that in that one picture and few words, I'd somehow managed to capture something essential, meaning the essence of this experience, that I couldn't have captured in 2,000 words of prose. I couldn't have done with photography. I couldn't have done it any other way. So there was something about this combination of pictures and words that told what that day was like for us. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off, and I thought, this might be the medium for telling this story I want to tell. I didn't tell my family about it right away for a couple of reasons. First, cowardice. And second, I didn't want to make them self-aware of having to be careful around me. It's kind of like, you know, the anthropologist doesn't want the observed to know they're being observed. I didn't want them to act any different. I didn't want to put any pressure on them because we're already going through this awful situation. Who needs the pressure of worrying what Brian's going to go home and write about at night? I didn't want that. They didn't deserve that. It wouldn't be fair to them. So I kept it from them for quite a while until I was probably more than half done with the story. And it went online, and I realized when it started to get more and more readers that I'd better tell them before they found out some other way. I called my mom and my sisters, I think all on the same phone call, and just said, you know, I've got something to tell you, a little project I've been working on. Go to this website, take a look, tell me what you think. And I described what I was doing to them and why I was doing it. And much to my relief, my mother was thrilled. My mom always had kind of an exhibitionist, dramatic streak to her anyway. I mean, she always wanted to be an actress. And she just thought it was fantastic that she was the star of this story. She called me back and said, I can't wait to find out what happens next. My sisters were a little less enthusiastic, and I understand why. Part of my charge, part of my purpose in doing this, the promise I made to myself was to be as honest as I could about it, realizing that as a participant in the story, there would be some limits to how clearly I could see things. But I wanted to be very honest about it, and that meant not always painting all the members of my family, including myself, in a very good light. What surprised me was I very early on recognized that I'd captured something universal, more universal than I'd expected. There seems to be something very common among families going through any kind of crisis. I get emails from people saying, you know, I'm not like you, I don't have sisters, it's my dad, it's not my mom, and it's not cancer, but somehow it's like you were sitting in our living room watching us. Your family's nothing like mine, and yet somehow you nail this. Holy cow. You know, that's as a writer, that's a neat thing to accomplish. Having the book is my legacy. It's going to be in libraries. My kids can give it to their kids who will never have known my mother. It's my legacy, but more than that, it's my mom's legacy. My mom wanted something good to come out of this bad experience. And I think she very much saw this book as a way she could help make that happen.
Ever since I was a little kid, I drew just with big pads on the ground. I'd have huge Barbie games going where I'd be, reenacting stories from my head, and then I would go over and I would draw, tons and tons of pictures of these stories. When I was in 3rd grade, I had a journal that was at first just like an assignment, like just draw a picture and write about your day, and it just took off. And the first couple pages of the journal, you can see like my 3rd grade teachers like, "That's very interesting. Oh, how good. That's a simile. Did you know that?" And then after that, she doesn't write in it anymore. And I feel like she probably knew that this was something that I was going to keep forever, because I just went on all these stories. It allowed me to just have a daily deadline. And yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it being, well, you just don't even know that it's hard yet. By the end of the journal, I had a story that involved every single member of my 5th grade class and the teacher. She was the director of the movie that we were all in. I read picture books, tons of picture books, like Daniel Manis Pinkwater and Maurice Sendak, and I loved them. And I didn't really read comics until about 5th grade, when I started reading Mad Magazine pretty obsessively. The first comic that I ever did was in college. It was like just me being really depressed, having like an identity crisis, and going to Red Lobster and meeting up with all these, fish that were about to get boiled or fried, and them being like, "Hey, you don't have it so bad." That was my first comic that I ever did, and I felt like it was both natural and cathartic, and that was a really wonderful thing to do for me at that point, because at the same time I was doing all these sort of highfalutin conceptual art pieces, I just did this one comic that I loved. I came to New York, got really sick of the art world, I had this horrible internship, and at the same time I was reading people like Crumb and Chris Ware, Julie Doucet, Linda Berry, all these awesome cartoonists, and I felt like, wow, you can tell a story in a different way. It's not just superheroes, it can be whatever you want to do, and you can take artists like Philip Guston and Max Beckman, who are some of my favorite painters, you can kind of mix those styles up into cartooning. And so the world just suddenly opened up, because I had all of these narrative ideas too, and I could just put them into these drawings, and so I have not gone back since. My roommate's friend was starting up girl.com, and that is a website for teenage girls. And so I got this job doing comics for teenage girls, and they had to be semi-autobiographical or biographical. So at first I just thought about this as a job, and then I got tons of emails from teenagers right away. Like I did this comic called Am I Fat, and I got like 10,000 emails just for that one comic, and it was this incredible immediate response. The semi-autobiographical stuff, or whatever you want to call that, comes from personal experience. But then as soon as you write a personal experience on the page, you need to edit it to make it helpful for the reader to understand anything. So from drawing to writing to pacing to inking, laying out, editing. Editing is a huge thing with comics that people don't really understand, that many times you have to go back and change something that's like the last thing that you want to do. I feel like the greatest thing about cartooning right now is that I feel like it's just right now opening up and blossoming. There's a million ways to do it, kind of like there's a million ways to tell a story that haven't even been discovered yet. And then I also just like that, anybody can pick up a book. There's sort of a guerrilla aspect of it where it's, for the general population, it doesn't, again, it's not like in a museum. And I guess the other thing is that I feel like it's a life. I look at Crumb's late work, and I feel like he's doing his best stuff now. And so it's this whole life's work that's kind of cut out for me, and that's very exciting, too.
Don't have to run, don't have to hide, 'cause we got something burning inside. We got love.